Have you ever felt trapped in a place that should have felt like home? This is the story of Martha, a young girl whose quiet life turned into a nightmare behind the walls of a seemingly perfect house. Every secret, every whispered fear, every silent tear led her to a moment of courage that changed everything. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and join our community so you never miss a story that could move you, inspire you, or even change the way you see the world. They say every house remembers the people who've cried within its walls. If that's true, the old yellow house on Pinebrook Hill still carries the echo of my mother's muffled sobs and the sound of my own quiet prayers whispered into the dark. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can smell the faint mix of lemon polish and old wood that clung to those walls, and I can almost hear the wind sneaking through the cracks, whispering warnings I was too young to understand. My name is Martha, and for a long time I believed life would fix itself if I just stayed good, quiet, and small. I thought the world rewarded people who waited patiently for kindness. But I learned the hard way that sometimes silence doesn't keep you safe. It only teaches the wrong people how much they can take before you break. I grew up just outside of Cedarfield, a town small enough that everyone knew who baked the best pie and who left their porch light on the longest. Mom worked 2 jobs at the diner, serving smiles along with coffee to people who barely noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. I used to wait up for her every night, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of soap and cinnamon. She'd come home tired, her hands red from washing dishes, but she'd always find the strength to kiss my forehead and whisper, "We're gonna be okay, sweetheart." And I believed her, because back then she was all I had, and I was all she had. Then Mark came into our lives. He was polite, well-spoken, and carried himself like someone who always knew what to say. His truck broke down near the diner one rainy evening, and by the next week, he was showing up every night for the best cherry pie in town. Mom said he made her feel seen again. I watched her smile more, laugh more, something she hadn't done in years. At first, I liked that. I wanted her to be happy, but Mark's eyes made me uneasy. There was something behind his smile, something that didn't reach his eyes, like a shadow waiting for the lights to go out. When they got married, everything changed. We moved into his big yellow house on the hill, a place that looked warm from the outside but always felt cold to me. Neighbors adored him. He fixed fences, mowed lawns, even volunteered at the church on Sundays. To them, Mark was the kind of man small towns put on pedestals. But behind closed doors, he was different. His kindness had rules. His temper had timing. His compliments felt more like warnings wrapped in sugar. The first time he raised his voice, it was over something small, a broken cup. His shout made the room tremble. He apologized right after, smiling again like nothing happened. But I saw the way Mom flinched, the way her hands shook as she wiped the counter. After that, she stopped laughing as much. I started noticing how his presence filled every corner of the house. The way he stood too close, the way he watched too long, the way silence became thick whenever he entered a room. I wanted to tell Mom how I felt, but her happiness seemed fragile, like one harsh word could shatter it completely. So I stayed quiet. And in that silence, something inside me began to fade. Time in that house seemed to move differently. Days slid into each other until the seasons blurred. Mark's rules crept in quietly, disguised as concern. "Don't go out after dark, Martha. The neighborhood isn't safe. Don't wear that. You'll catch a cold. Don't talk to strangers. They'll fill your head with nonsense." At first it sounded like care, but soon it felt like walls closing in. He wanted to know where I was every minute, what I was reading, who I spoke to at school. Mom said he was just protective. I wanted to believe her, but it didn't feel like protection. It felt like possession. The house grew quieter. Even laughter seemed to echo wrong, like the walls didn't recognize the sound anymore. When Mom tried to tell a story from work, Mark interrupted, correcting her, making her smaller with every sentence. She'd force a smile, eyes down, and I'd feel something inside me knot tighter. Some nights I'd lie awake and listen to the rhythm of footsteps in the hallway. My breath would freeze until they faded. I learned how to make myself invisible, how to shrink into corners, how to smile on command. Silence was safer than questions. At school, I started staying late, volunteering for anything that kept me away from home. The librarian, Mrs. Caldwell, noticed. She said I had old eyes for someone my age. I didn't understand what she meant then, but now I know. She saw the weight I was carrying. She'd slip me books about courage and self-worth, and I'd read them in secret, hiding them under my bed like stolen light. One evening, Mark came home earlier than usual. The air in the house changed. Even the clock seemed to tick softer. Mom and I were setting the table when he started questioning her about the bills. His voice was calm at first, but it turned sharp, slicing through her words. When she tried to explain, he slammed his fist against the counter. The sound made the plates rattle. I froze. Mom stood still for a moment, then quietly gathered the shards of her confidence and whispered, "Let's eat later, honey." That night she didn't finish her dinner. Neither did I. After that, she began noticing things, how his anger always had an excuse, how my shoulders tensed whenever he entered a room, how my laughter had turned into a whisper. She didn't ask questions at first, just watched. But mothers have a way of knowing what words can't confess. One Sunday, she found the stack of hidden books beneath my bed. Her hands trembled as she read the titles: Women Who Survived, The Road to Self-Rescue, Silent Strength. She didn't say anything, just pulled me close. That hug lasted longer than usual, heavy with everything unspoken. For the first time, I felt a spark of something that had been gone for months: hope. Maybe she saw it too, because from that day on, she started keeping an eye on him in a way she never had before. And Mark noticed. For weeks, the house seemed to hold its breath. Mark moved through the rooms quieter than before, but sharper too, like a knife wrapped in velvet. Every word carried a question inside it, every glance a warning. Mom started locking her purse, double-checking windows, keeping her phone close even while she cooked. I could feel her gathering courage in small pieces, the way you gather shards of glass before you can sweep them away. One evening in early spring, a storm rolled over Cedarfield. Thunder shook the windows, and the power flickered out. The three of us sat in the living room with only a flashlight between us. Rain hammered the roof, and the shadows on the walls seemed alive. Mark began one of his quiet interrogations, asking where Mom had gone that afternoon, why she hadn't answered his call, why I was reading instead of helping with dinner. His voice was low, but each word felt heavier. Then, for the first time, Mom didn't answer softly. She looked straight at him and said, "Because I don't owe you an explanation for every breath I take." The room went still. The storm outside roared, louder, as if the sky itself had been waiting for her to speak. Mark stood up. Mom didn't move. I remember the beam of the flashlight trembling in my hands, throwing broken shapes of light across his face. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd shout, maybe worse, but he didn't. He just stared at her, jaw tight, and walked out of the room. The front door slammed so hard the pictures on the wall tilted. Mom turned to me. Her voice shook, but her eyes were clear. "We're leaving, Martha. Tonight." We packed in silence. A single suitcase each, clothes, documents, the stack of books that had kept me breathing. The rain made it easier to hide our footsteps. When we finally stepped outside, the air felt cleaner than it had in months. We drove through the downpour toward the bus station, headlights carving tunnels of light through the storm. On the ride out of Cedarfield, I watched the town shrink in the rearview mirror, the diner, the church steeple, the faint outline of that yellow house on the hill. My chest hurt, but for the first time the pain carried something new inside it, relief. Mom reached over and held my hand. "No one will ever silence you again," she said. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. Outside, dawn was breaking through the rain, pale and trembling. It felt like the world was starting over, and maybe we were too. The bus carried us all night, humming like a heartbeat that refused to stop. When the sun rose, it poured gold over the horizon, our first sunrise in freedom. We got off in a nearby city, unfamiliar and loud, the kind of place where no one asked questions because everyone was busy surviving their own. Mom rented a single room above a bakery. It was small, 2 beds, a table, a window that rattled when the trains passed, but it was ours. For weeks we lived on coffee, soup, and second-hand hope. Each morning she'd lace up her shoes, go job hunting, and return smelling of bread and determination. I went back to school. Walking through those new hallways felt strange. I still listened for footsteps behind me, still flinched when someone raised their voice. But slowly, the fear began to lose its edge. Mom found work at a nearby cafe, and I started volunteering at the library. The first time I helped a little girl pick out a book, I caught myself smiling, really smiling. That night I realized how much space fear had taken, and how healing started by simply claiming that space back. We reported Mark to the authorities a month later. The process was exhausting. Interviews, paperwork, long hours in waiting rooms that smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee. But we did it. We told the truth, every measured word of it. Watching my mother stand up for both of us made me see her not as fragile, but fierce. She wasn't just my protector, she was proof that courage doesn't roar, it persists. Therapy came next. Talking hurt at first. I'd spent so long swallowing my voice that letting it out felt unnatural, like learning to breathe differently. My therapist, Dr. Lane, had a quiet way of asking questions that didn't feel like interrogation. She said healing was a circle. You move forward, then back, then forward again. And one day you realize the circle has widened enough to let in light. Months passed. Seasons changed. I learned to cook without waiting for permission, to laugh without looking over my shoulder. Mom painted again. Bright colors splashed across canvases that smelled of turpentine and freedom. One evening we sat on the roof of our building, watching city lights flicker below. The air was warm, the stars faint but stubborn. "Do you ever think about Cedarfield?" I asked. "Sometimes," she said, "but not to miss it, just to remember how far we came." She was right. Pain wasn't my identity anymore. It was a landmark we'd passed. That night, before going to bed, I opened my old notebook and wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." It wasn't just a line. It was a promise. Years have passed since the night we left Cedarfield. Sometimes I still wake before dawn and listen to the hum of the city outside my window, the sound of buses starting their routes, a neighbor's radio murmuring through the walls. It's strange how ordinary life can sound like freedom once you've learned what silence costs. I finished school, then college. I studied social work, not because I wanted to relive the past, but because I wanted to understand it, to help others who didn't yet have the words for their pain. My mother says it was the first time she'd seen me walk into something without fear shadowing my steps. The first time I told my story publicly was at a small community center. My hands shook so badly that I nearly dropped the microphone. But when I looked up, I saw faces that mirrored my own. People who knew what it meant to live in someone else's shadow. People who wanted to believe healing was possible. I spoke softly at first, then louder. Each word felt like a door opening. When I finished, there was silence, but not the old kind. This one felt safe. Then came the applause, gentle but real, and I realized that my voice, the one I had hidden for years, had finally come home. Mom sat in the front row, tears shining on her cheeks. Afterward, she hugged me and whispered, "You saved us, Martha. By speaking, you saved us." That night I walked alone through the quiet streets. The city lights shimmered on wet pavement, and for the first time, I didn't feel lost in them. I felt part of the world again, whole, ordinary, human. I still keep one of Mrs. Caldwell's old books on my shelf, Silent Strength. Its pages are yellowed, the spine cracked, but I keep it as a reminder. Pain is part of my story, yes, but it isn't the ending. The ending is this: living freely, loving deeply, and never confusing silence with peace again. Mom used to say, it's that healing isn't a single moment. It's a collection of small choices made every day. To speak, to reach out, to believe you deserve light. And that's how my story ends. Not with a scream, not with a final confrontation, but with a whisper that grew into a voice strong enough to fill the world. My story isn't just about surviving. It's about finding your voice, reclaiming your life, and choosing hope even after the darkest moments. If my journey inspired you, make sure to hit subscribe and join our community. Because here at Voice of Aunt Martha, we bring you real stories of courage, survival, and the strength to rise again. Until then, see ya!